Hello everyone. I'm going to be making a video about why I've picked the Cove over all the other established brands. Um, I've written down everything I want to say, so I'm not going to be speaking directly to the camera. I'm actually going to be reading it out because I'm not a YouTuber and I'm not yet used to speaking directly to the camera. So here we go. Since making this, so here we go. Since making the decision to purchase the Cove 800X Pro, I've never received so much interest and teasing for a bike choice before. I think in part because it's the bike I'm travelling South America with, in part because it's a new bike, but mainly because the bike is Chinese. From people that know very little about motorbikes, right to experienced riders, most nearly always ask the following line of questions. What bike did you pick? I say Cove 800X Pro. They say Cove, never heard of them. Where are they made? I say China. What always follows by nearly every person then is kind of like a roll of the eyes, a smirk, laughing, or a shake of the head. Then follows the question of how much money did you spend on that? I tell them over 10,000. Then follows, would you not have picked ... This is where the line of questioning kind of changes depending on the level of experience the person has with motorbikes. So people with no experience say, would you not have picked something safer? Then people with a bit more experience with bikes would say, would you not have picked a Japanese bike or a GS, because maybe they've seen a long way down or a long way around. Then the most experienced would say an Africa Twin or a Yamaha Tenere. And you know what? It's a valid question. I probably would have said the same about Cove before I did my research, and it took a lot of research to convince me. So why did I pick a Chinese unknown brand over the well-known Japanese, German and British brands for this trip? Before I answer the question, I would like to give a small bit of history of my background with owning and travelling on motorbikes. I'm now 37 years old. I've been riding bikes for 17 years. And like most do, I started out in the motocross bikes, a Japanese Yamaha YZ125. Then I got a better Yamaha YZ125, which progressed onto road bikes. And what a first bike, a Honda VFR 400 NC30. I adored that bike, and it was my only vehicle I had to commute to work on for a year. I drove through the Irish sun, rain, snow and ice. From there, I've owned many more bikes over the years, and always Japanese or British made. And everyone around me had motorbikes. My brother, my stepfather, my friends, even my co-workers. Even motorbikes I used as motivation in getting my life together in my mid-20s. This is a picture of me sitting on a Triumph Daytona 675 at a bike show. That year, one of my jobs was carrying buckets of rocks with my hands on a demolition site. I promised myself that if I went back to college, I would buy myself that exact bike, except in red. It was the screensaver on my laptop. I went to university, and after a couple of years, I got my degree in engineering, and the first thing I purchased after landing myself a job as a construction engineer was that bike, the Triumph Daytona 675 in red. And what a bike. I still remember the joy and excitement of opening the garage door and it looking out at me. Like, where are we going? I honestly think bikes are a form of therapy. And with that motorbike, it is where I discovered my joy of travelling by motorbikes. I travelled through the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and Germany. I then did more travelling in many other places on many other bikes, some I owned, some I borrowed or rented. I enjoyed riding sports bikes, naked bikes, chopper style, classic, off-road bikes and supermotos. That Yamaha XT660 was another one of my favourites. So why am I telling you my history of motorbikes? I think it is to say I have a bit of experience owning and riding a lot of different bikes. It's also to say I've travelled quite a bit on bikes. I'm not an expert, but I do have 17 years experience, and I think I know what I want in a motorbike for my trip. Now, I've never travelled a continent before, So for this trip of South America, I began a near obsession hunt to find the right bike for the trip using all this experience. I'm also traveling South America by myself, so what is important to me is range, as there will be huge gaps between petrol stations, weight, so I can pick the bike up by myself, reliability, so I'm not left stranded somewhere. The last one, number 4, is like load capacity / power / comfort. Huge distances are going to be travelled over many days, so I don't want like a single cylinder thumper, like vibrating, or a very small bike. That's kind of exhausting to ride. So from that, I looked at new and used adventure bikes. Starting with new bikes and the bikes people were telling me to get, the Tenere, the Africa Twin, the GS. I did look at these types of bikes early in my search. I test rode the Tenere and sat in the others and quickly spotted a problem. Here's the weights of these bikes with fuel in them. This does not include like the crash bars, and they're all like optional extras with these bikes. That F900 GS, that only has a 14-litre tank size, and look at the weight of it. All these bikes are far too heavy for me. I imagine being slightly hurt after falling off on one of these bikes in the middle of nowhere on a sloped rocky road. Not a chance am I picking these weights up. When I watched Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor's travels in Long Way Round and Long Way Down as a young man, from then I always knew I wanted to do something like this someday. However, my trip and their trip is much different, as they were a team and I'm going by myself. So when they dropped their GS, there was always a couple of people or more there to help pick the bike back up. On a side note, I actually met them recently on a ferry in Norway. I was on a cycling trip and they were filming a new journey. I think they're calling it Long Way Home. I got speaking with Charlie Borman and he's an absolute gentleman. We talked bikes and travels. I honestly couldn't believe I had just met them before starting my trip. I'm now the same age as them when they started their trip, their first one. Anyway, so new adventure bikes from main manufacturers were out of the question for me. This then made me think of older adventure bikes before they got fat. But I quickly moved off of this, as firstly, when bikes get older, a lot of the time they're going to be carbureted. I'm done with carbureted bikes. Cleaning jets and also having to deal with carbureted performance in changing elevations. That would worry me for where I'm going in South America. There's going to be huge elevation changes. I want a fuel injected bike with an O2 sensor. I also don't want a used bike where I have no idea how it has been treated for its life and an engine pops on me in the middle of nowhere, as I have no idea on its service cycle. This was a frustrating but also an interesting search. I spent more time researching the bike I'm picking than I have about South America. However, I want the journey itself to dictate the route I take and not the limitations of the bike or me. I want to reduce the chance as much as possible that I will not take a route because I worry if I can take the bike there. The more research I did, the more I got annoyed at the established manufacturers not making light adventure bikes anymore and promoting their bigger, more expensive, very profit-orientated motorbikes designed by an accountant. But they're not the only ones to blame. I think the manufacturers get feedback from the guys reviewing the bikes, the established biker media, who a lot of the time are ex-racers that seek out performance and speed. I don't see many reviewers praising lightweight bikes by picking them up off the ground, but I see them praising top speed, corner performance and features, which is fine for performance bikes, but not adventure bikes. I think also the people who buy these bikes for the wrong reason are also partially responsible. Buying the latest version that has an extra few cc's over the last version, not caring with the knock-on effect of the weight, but the fact it says 1300 instead of 1250cc on the side of the bike now. In short, we're all to blame. So as I explained in the previous video, this brought me to the Cove 800X Pro. It ticked the boxes for me with its range, with its 20-litre fuel tank size, with the wet weight for its 185 kg / 407 pounds, with the power / comfort with its 800cc parallel twin smooth engine. But the last thing, the reliability, the thing that everyone has been teasing me about because it's from China. And to be fair, with good reason, as China has produced a lot of crap up to now. But they're also now making parts for the established, well-known brands. They're making engines, electronics, and other parts. Even the iPhone's made in China now. But how Cove separated themselves as a good brand to me was with two stories. Firstly, the story of how Cove entered the Dakar Rally, the hardest endurance race in the world, to prove how serious they were in reliability. Which then led to the story of the CEO, who went from a street mechanic to a founder and CEO of a motorbike manufacturing company. Firstly, on the story of Cove entering the Dakar Rally. To anyone that doesn't know, the Dakar Rally is the hardest endurance race in the world. It tests man and vehicle in roughly a 9,000 kilometre race over around 12 days in the Saudi Arabian desert. All types of vehicles enter, like cars, trucks and motorbikes. To be a racer in the Dakar, you need a strong resume of off-road rally experience. The applicants are then reviewed by ASO organisation to see if the rider is an exceptional enough talent. These are the best of the best riders, and with that, only about half the riders finish. The high failure rate is from the crashes, the extreme mental and physical challenges, and lastly, mechanical failure. Last year, there was around 140 motorbike riders entered. The professional riders are then backed by factory works teams from the usual big brands like Honda, Yamaha, KTM, Husqvarna, etc. Because of the high failure rate, teams will have several riders, often up to 3, 4 or 5 riders in a team, with the hopes of at least half finishing it. Cove, or Kove, entered the Dakar for the first time last year in 2023. They made their debut with 4 riders. They shocked everyone when all 4 motorbikes and riders finished the Dakar Rally. Like, that rarely happens for a team when all riders finish, even the best of teams, let alone it being for a factory team's first time doing it. It brought the question of who's behind this team, and this brought me onto the story that sealed this brand as being legit. The CEO behind this brand was Zhang Zhui. I'm definitely butchering the pronunciation of that. A man who started his career as a street mechanic. This is where he developed his deep understanding of motorbike mechanics and performance, which ultimately led to his creation of Cove in 2017. This background as a mechanic meant he knew about reliability, serviceability and performance. He envisioned selling Cove as a premium brand, a premium Chinese brand, and I bet he faced all the rolls of the eyes and smirks. There's people outside now. He played a significant role. They got in. He played a significant role in developing the Cove 800X Pro. The goal for the bike was its on and off-road capabilities, its high ground clearance and being lightweight. The most important, being lightweight. Finally, someone who gets it. And like many other great CEOs, after he created this company and amazing bikes, the bean-counting MBAs got into the boardroom and made him step down as CEO, essentially kicking him out of his company. A familiar story. Anyway, before he was ousted, one of the last bikes Zhang made as a CEO, who actually gets what real adventure enthusiast riders want, made the 800X Pro. A lightweight 799cc parallel twin engine with little vibrations, a fully adjustable KYB suspension front and back, tubeless tyres so easy fixes on the road, ABS and traction control that can be turned on and off easily, and no other complicated electronics. A proper engineer and mechanic. I feel sad how it ended for Zhang after watching earlier this year his emotional social media post where I explained he was stepping down. He was kicked out. However, he has now left his mark, and I wasn't passing on one of the opportunities of purchasing a bike designed by a real motorbike enthusiast CEO. I also think what is happening now is the arrival of China to the mass global market for motorbikes. I think it's similar to Japan's story of the 70s, where before the 60s they were seen as a complete joke. They have an uphill battle due to their reputation, just like Japan did. And I may end up regretting this decision. However, I'm speaking to all the other manufacturers making these huge bikes by not giving them my money. I'm giving it to a company who is willing to try and make motorbikes for the average rider who will actually ride them as adventure bikes. In my first video, the comments I've seen also seem to agree with the sentiment of this video. Well, most of them. I will have a new video uploaded shortly where I'm leaving my job and collecting my motorbike in preparation for South America. I hope to see you there.